Diablo's lore is legendary, and its development history is no small part of that. In fact, there is so much history within that realm I couldn't fit it all into a 10-minute format. So instead, I've chosen several abridged points and wrapped them up into 10 facts about Diablo's development that you may or may not know. This is Tales for Game Lord Dash, and here are 10 facts you probably didn't know about Diablo 1. Inception. Diablo 1 was originally developed by Blizzard North, formerly Condor Games, which was founded by Eric Schaefer, Max Schaefer, and David Brevik. Co-founder David Brevik had initially came up with the idea for the game when he was still in high school, and was inspired for the name by the mountain he grew up near in California, which was incidentally named Mount Diablo. Though Blizzard North is no longer around following a conflict with their publisher at the time, Vivendi, a subsidiary of Blizzard Entertainment, the credit for Diablo's success is still credited to the original team and the three minds behind the group's formation. Development. Diablo went through a crazy development cycle. Many of the concepts that went into its creation were a true mark of a team trying to reinvent the wheel, and ultimately what led to Diablo defining the ARPG genre. Originally, Diablo was going to be a turn-based RPG, similar to how many 90s RPGs were developed, but instead the team decided to go with the real-time action format we all know today. It was also meant to be a DOS game, and was even originally designed with claymation graphics, which were a major staple of the decade. This was ultimately scrapped as that development method was far too time-consuming and expensive compared to the method that they used, and honestly really feels all the better for it. I mean, can you imagine slaying a soft, squishy, moldable Diablo clay fighter style? Reception. The sales for Diablo 1 far exceeded the expectations of the development team and Blizzard Entertainment, becoming the top-selling PC game at the time, and its popularity would continue, even until now, with players still coming back and playing the game both for that little dose of nostalgia, and for the simple fact that the game is just phenomenal. The dark atmosphere would also be the primary staple in what set the game apart from other franchises, and remains a huge point of criticism to this day when comparing the older games of Diablo 1 and Diablo 2 to later installments, Diablo 3 and Immortal, and even remains a huge point of worry in the development of Diablo 4. Though much of what we've seen has assuaged many fan fears, though not all. Musical atmosphere. Ask anyone. Music can make or break a game, movie, production of any kind, really. For example, Doom was always a game that was heralded for its use of awesome synthesized metal tracks accompanying its wild shooter design, and its more modern variants owed their atmospheric success to Mick Gordon's insane heavy metal compositions, readily evident in the difference between Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal, which Gordon didn't finish mixing his tracks for the final release, and thus, much of the quality was missing. Likewise, Diablo's dark background music composition brings the game together thanks to composer Matt Uelmen. This is even evident in the repetition of his style through a multitude of tracks even through Diablo 3, which, though Blizzard confirms that Matt had recorded around 90 minutes of 12-string guitar riffs, it's unknown how much of that was actually used in-game, though the style of many of his original scores echoes through the soundtrack at many very noticeable points. Story canon. An odd point of the development of Diablo exists in its story development. The story itself was not initially meant to be as deep as it is now, which much is owed to Chris Metzen on that development. Diablo was originally meant to be the literal devil, and the hero a resident who grew up in Tristram, whose family was killed by raiders and had been away for a time and came back during the events of Diablo 1 to save his town and free the king's son from the devil's grasp. The story was meant even to be open-ended, with possibilities leading into a goblin cave or mushroom forest, very similar to high fantasy stories like Lord of the Rings and Dungeons & Dragons. In fact, Blizzard Entertainment sent the ending that we know today, which involved the hero shoving Diablo's Soulstone in their head, leading to the Dark Wanderer storyline in Diablo 2, with merely a month left until completion. Many of the initial design points would pop up later in the story, of Aiden being the Dark Wanderer, Kane's family being killed by raiders, and areas like the Vault popping up later loaded with treasure goblins in Diablo 3, all conceived in the original design of Diablo 1. Cut quests. As Dash has covered on this channel, a multitude of quests were cut from Diablo 1 and are now playable in modded versions, like the HD Beelzebub mod, which brings several additional characters and storyline points into the universe that were scrapped until later installments of the game and written lore, such as Andariel, or never used at all like Tremaine the Priest, even though Shadowfang would appear in Diablo 2 as a unique two-handed sword. PlayStation version. Diablo 1 was the first in the franchise to hit consoles after being developed exclusively for PC, and would be the only one until Diablo 3 hit the PlayStation 3 in late 2013. Surprisingly, it was published by Electronic Arts. Yes, that Electronic Arts. Sacred. In the ARPG Sacred, a scale homage to Diablo was built in-game resembling Tristram Village. Every building and landmark placement is mirrored exactly to Diablo 1's hometown, even to the point of having the entrance to the caves across the river to the north, a fiery entrance to hell near Pepin's house, and even Adria's hut, where an enemy labeled Witch can be killed. In fact, all of the townspeople turn into ghouls on approach and attempt to kill you, including NPCs called the Blacksmith, meant to resemble Griswold. Sadly, the only villager not around to put down his wort, but you can still find his feet firmly planted next to his tree. Only his feet. Subliminal Messages. In the game's download launcher, hidden messages exist between Diablo's horns. If you adjust the color setting on the image, two messages become apparent. One says, "Buy War 2," obviously meaning to buy Warcraft 2 for anyone that didn't already have the game, which is where you find promotional material for Diablo 1. Nice cross-merchandising. The second message says, "Natalie Portman rocks," and even though she was still in her mid-teens at the time, obviously she already had a few fans on the team, especially thanks to her appearance at the time in the cult hit Leon the Assassin. It's true though, she does rock. Devil's Advocate. Even though the game was rated mature and many parents let their kids play it anyways, Diablo actually turns out to be a wholesome experience, teaching your kids to take up arms against insurmountable evil and even brush their teeth. Wait. No, seriously. Upon entering level 16 of Hell, Diablo can be heard muttering some form of incantation or hellish gibberish. But in true devilish fashion, when playing this sound backwards, it says, "Eat your vegetables and brush after every meal." He does say this as the hero enters his lair, so obviously trying to ensure that his host will be nice and healthy and strong and clean, so he can tear apart his flesh later and become a hulking red dragon beast. Lofty goals on that one. I swear, the more and more I look into this game, the more I am blown away by the sheer labyrinth of development history. This game is insane and completely deserving of its fame and even its infamy. And with the current success of Diablo 2's remaster, this game is deserving of the same treatment, just so long as it preserves the integrity of this absolute classic game, whose story has influenced so much of my interest for decades and been a huge part of my life. Thank you all for watching, and stay tuned for future fact videos on this legendary franchise.